The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WWDB TV. Hot topics, food, fun, entertainment, and serious business. Live Las Vegas with Rikki Cheese.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Live Las Vegas with Rikki Cheese. My favorite nutritionist on the planet has graced us with his presence once again. Now, this is fantastic. Andy Bellatti, who is, he has his own website, Andy Bellatti Nutrition. He is also the strategic director for the Dietitians for Professional Integrity, and that's very important when we talk about professional integrity when it comes to food. So we're going to talk about a wide range of topics that'll help you improve your health and really get behind, there is so much misinformation out there about nutrition, and I can understand how people are really confused, because I'm one of those geeky media people who, once I get on some sort of topic, I just have to exhaust it. Mm-hmm. And once I decided to get onto nutrition and look on Netflix, has an incredible series of different things about food. That's how I met Andy. I was looking at some stuff, and then I saw your name and your website, and I was like, would you come and be a guest on my show? And he said, oh yeah, sure, I will. Really good information and really current information that we all need to hear, and something to think about. Just don't rush out and think you have to change your diet overnight, because that's not how it works. So for those folks who don't know you, how did you come to be a nutritionist?
Well, it started, actually, what inspired me was the Morgan Spurlock documentary Supersize Me from 2004, where he documents what happened to his health when he ate McDonald's for 30 days straight. Right. I had always kind of been interested in nutrition, because back in 1998, I went pescatarian. I stopped eating beef, chicken, or pork. But I was still what I would call a French fry-tarian, right? I was still eating French fries and mozzarella sticks and all that junk. Right. But with time, I just got more into it. And by the time that I saw that documentary, I was in my early 20s, and I started to see how the way that I ate affected how I felt. And that just really opened my eyes, and that's what really planted the seed in me to study nutrition and eventually become a dietitian.
Right, and he is widely published. You can find his work all over the place. He has been published in different areas like the Huffington Post, Food Safety News, quoted on national media, including the New York Times, the LA Times, and Business Insider. And most recently, I saw this morning, he has been quoted on CNBC, where the CEOs of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and JP Morgan's Jamie Dixon are all getting together to talk about healthcare. But the cool thing about it was, one of the biggest fast food junkies in that group is Warren Buffett.
Yeah, well, and that just shows you the gap that there is whenever the conversation is about healthcare. Everybody's talking about, which makes sense to some degree, getting people to go to the doctor, right, and prevention and primary care, and getting your blood work done every year, which of course has benefits, right. But almost nobody is making the connection between food and healthcare. Right. And when you look at one of the biggest drivers of healthcare costs, it's type 2 diabetes, right. Which in 90% of the cases, if you fix the food, you will see blood sugar go down with no need for medication.
Well, more than a third of Americans are obese, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And as you said, diabetes and heart disease are two of the biggest problems. We have a woman here in town, Rosalind Brooks, who has Vegas Roots Garden, and she has a program that she started for women of color, because in the African American community, women of color, traditionally we grow up with really tasty food, but food that's really bad for us. A lot of fat, a lot of sugar, a lot of salt. It's really good, and we wonder why everybody's fat in the family, or why these diseases are so prevalent. And there's a direct connection. One of the big challenges she says she's having is to get the sisters to let go of some of these, you're talking about generations of cooking in a certain way. And even my challenge, I had to break down a week ago and buy some butter. I did, and I knew as I was buying the butter, Rikki, you know better. Yes, but I wanted it.
Well, and you bring up some really good points, because, and that's why food also is such a it's a complex topic, because it's not just about I always say, everybody knows that eating Big Macs isn't healthy. The issue is why are people still doing it. And the thing is that, food choices are about our feelings, our emotions, our culture, our socioeconomic status. There's a lot that goes into food choices. Right. But that's why I also think it is important when I work with people to be flexible in the sense that, look, if you like green vegetables sauteed in a little bit of butter and garlic, if a little bit of butter and garlic is going to get you to eat a bunch of Swiss chard and kale and Brussels sprouts, then go for it. Right. So it's about the totality of the diet. And unless you're, this whole thing of putting butter in the coffee, that's insanity. But if you're using a teaspoon or two to cook greens, I'm not going to get on your case.
Right, exactly. The bottom line is that you're eating greens to begin with.
Exactly,
right?
Yes.
So what is the biggest challenge that you think Americans are facing right now when it comes to nutrition?
I think it is the fact that we still are caught up in the fad diets. Right now it's keto. I don't know if you heard of the keto diet. So everybody's talking about keto. So keto is a diet that is very high in fat, very low in carbohydrates, and moderate on protein. Okay. So people are now eating very fatty meats, cooked in a ton of butter. As usual, beans are bad. Oatmeal is bad. Most fruits are bad. And the keto diet has some legitimacy. For example, if somebody has really out of control type 2 diabetes, it can play a role. Some people who have epilepsy, it actually can help. But everybody else trying to lose weight, they're all on board the keto train. But within 2 or 3 weeks, most people jump off because they're like, oh, now I'm getting really tired of just eating a bunch of fatty food.
Right.
And again, there's all these books and all these experts, but it comes down to really, if you find a diet that is high in whole foods, low in sugar, high in fiber, you got to make it work for you, and that'll pay off.
Right.
But all these crazy things, like eating only grapefruit for a week, doing keto, doing no carbs, after 2 or 3 weeks, it's done, and then you're back to square one.
And part of my research has been so amazing to me, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later too, is the studies. I love studies, and I always want to trace back who paid for the study and how wide was the study, how widely was the study done. And it's just amazing to me how many of these studies that lead to, you should eat this way, go back to a certain manufacturer or a certain agricultural concern that it's in their best interest to say that this is what you really should eat. And somehow it gets put out there by the media. And not to put my folks down, because it's really hard, unless this is something that you're not obsessed with like I am, and you really want to trace it back to the origin, to take the time when this new study comes out saying, well, eat this way, or like the keto diet, something like that, and everybody gets on board and said, I lost 10 pounds, and oh, this is really great. And for me, like as a carnivore, I probably would have loved that 2 years ago and would have tried it. Now, even when you said that, I thought, beef and butter? Oh, I can't even think about anything that's quite that nasty. But I'm a different person now, right? I've been eating greens and tomatoes and potatoes and et cetera for a while. Mm-hmm. But even that was a transition. I think that and Rosalind has run into that too with the sisters, to say, start small.
Yes.
Maybe if you like collard greens, just do collard greens. And she has her main group in her universities. She started with Meatless Monday, or just give up meat 2 days a week. Don't have to do it every single day a week. Just do it 2 days a week, and then work yourself out into, gradually. Don't think you're going to do this overnight.
Yeah, I think doing it in stages is key. And another tactic I like to tell people, or strategy, is you could be eating, let's say you're eating chicken, broccoli, and brown rice.
Right.
Well, if right now your plate is 80% chicken, 10% brown rice, 10% broccoli, switch it up so that it's 30% chicken and then 30% broccoli and 30% brown rice, or whatever it might be. But even that, you can be eating the same exact meal, but just by changing the proportions. That can be a very easy change, because you're still eating the same recipe, but it's a matter of how much of each component you're having, and even that can have a big effect.
Right. Tell me about what's the battle between brown rice versus white rice?
Well, it's one of those things where, in theory, brown rice is a better choice because it's a whole grain. So it's brown because it's less processed. So it has more fiber. It also has more minerals. And people need to remember that minerals are the key to heart health and blood sugar regulation. It's not just vitamins. Now, that being said, brown rice is still cup by cup the same amount of carbohydrates.
Right.
So people who have, for example, blood sugar issues still need to watch the amount, because I work with some people who have blood sugar concerns or type 2 diabetes, and they think that because it's brown rice, they can have twice as much, right? That's what everybody wants. How can I have more?
I can have more food.
Right. It's still a carbohydrate, but whole grains are better because they have more fiber, more minerals, so you get more of a nutritional bang for your buck.
I just want to have this disclaimer. I am not on Netflix's payroll. It's just that they had this whole series of different shows about nutrition, and one of the ones, I will apologize to all of the people who I said this gluten sensitivity is just a myth. The way we process, it's not that wheat is bad for you. The way we process wheat now is very different. And wheat, I didn't realize, was in so many things, even cosmetics. So if you're lipsticks. So if you're allergic to gluten, your foundation might be a problem.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, that there's all these questions about why has the rate of celiac, which is the allergy to the protein in wheat,
right,
gluten, and even the sensitivity, why is that rising? And there's many different theories, but the point remains that you're right. I mean, when you look at wheat, the wheat that we grow now is very different from the wheat that was grown, back in the day. And so the whole question is, have we really adapted to be able to digest it? But also, more importantly, even if people are not, for example, I don't have any issues digesting wheat. But a few things that I do. Number one, most of the wheat that I eat is sprouted. So there's a certain brand of breads, the Ezekiel 4.9, which is all sprouted grains, sprouted wheat. And when it's sprouted, you get more minerals and it's easier to digest. But I also tell people, even if you don't have any issues with wheat, diversify your grains, because it's so easy to have toast, even if it's whole grain, toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, and then maybe pasta for dinner. Right. The thing is that different grains, just like with different nuts and seeds, have different nutrients. So if all you do is eat wheat, even if it's whole wheat, you're missing out on a few things. So if you can digest wheat, that's great, but also eat oats and quinoa and millet and buckwheat, which is not a grain, it's actually a seed. And amaranth. You want to diversify, because then you get different nutrients.
Right. That's getting back to how people ate before, and we're still kind of compensating now. And we'll talk more about the food industry. To mass produce food the way we're doing it now bears no resemblance to the way food was even produced in our grandparents' day. But the big thing that we want to talk about today is milk.
Yes.
Let's talk about dairy. Let's talk about some of the myths that are going on. Even still, it still persists today. This has probably got to be one of the most successful campaigns the food industry has ever run. Milk, it does a body good. Milk, it does a body bad.
Yeah, well, yeah, and the thing is, the dairy industry has spent literally millions of dollars with, by the way, our tax dollars to promote that beverage. What people need to know is that you do not need milk. If you want to have dairy, that's on you, and that's fine. But do you need dairy for strong bones? No, you don't. Calcium, you need calcium for strong bones, and there's calcium in leafy greens, there's calcium in plant-based foods, in chickpeas and oranges and almonds. Furthermore, what the dairy industry doesn't tell us, which is key, is that one very important nutrient for your bones is vitamin K. There is no vitamin K in dairy. There's a ton in leafy greens. So the dairy industry also did this really smart thing, I have to give them credit, of making it seem like the only mineral that matters for bones is calcium, when in reality there's many others, vitamin K, manganese, also not in dairy. So people need to understand that for bone health, you need a lot of nutrients, most of which are not in dairy, but are in plant-based foods.
The isolation of different vitamins, the isolation of, and the way processed foods, and this is I'm going to go on my soapbox on this one. if it's in a package. In fact, wasn't it Jack LaLanne, the late Jack
Yes.
LaLanne, who used to say that?
Pioneer.
If man makes it, I don't eat it.
Right. I think so,
I
yes.
remember being a little girl watching my mother watch Jack LaLanne work out. It's like, but he said, if man makes it, and I just remember this as a kid, if man makes it, I don't eat it. The bottom line is, if you are buying anything that is in a box or wrapped up in any sort of way, it's not fresh and whole and natural. It's processed food, and in many cases, they've injected vitamins back into
Yes.
it to compensate for the vitamins that were taken out. That was the thing I saw in the movie on wheat, was how now they're putting the stuff that was taken out of the wheat that's really good, they're using chemicals to put those back in. Well, why didn't you just leave the stuff that was in the wheat to begin with?
Yeah, because processing strips food of nutrients, and the food industry loves the word natural because it's not regulated.
Right.
There's no legal definition of natural. Same with fresh. So that's why, I always tell people the front of the box is marketing, the back is the actual facts. Forget what's in the front. Look at the nutrition facts, read the ingredient list, and that's what really tells the tale. Because, you look at a box of Lucky Charms in the front, and you think that it's like, the fountain of youth, right? And it's the most nutritious thing. And then you realize, oh, it's a bunch of sugar and corn dust that they just added a bunch of vitamins to.
And, once again, my obsession, you can't find the sugar count. They have all the other nutrients and all the other things, like the sodium and the phosphorus and whatever. But when the one show I watched, I found myself, I went in my kit, because I do have a couple of, couple of boxes. And I realized, oh my gosh, in every single box, the sugar count, that little part is always empty. They don't want you to know how much sugar is in the box.
Wow, it wasn't listed?
No, it says sugar, but there's no count.
Wow.
Yeah, so I found that in a lot of processed foods, and I was going to the grocery store. I started looking at that. That's actually fairly common in a lot of different processed foods. That part is, I don't know how they're getting away with that, but there's no definition, there's no number for the sugar count.
Oh, you mean there's no, for the percent?
For the percentage, right.
Right. Well, so the good thing is finally the recent food labeling law that should come into effect in, I think, 2 years requires that there now be, they set the maximum at 40 grams, and the food industry fought it tooth and nail, but it ended up passing. So you should now start seeing newer labels where next to the sugar, the grams, it'll tell you the percent, and then people will see that a can of soda is over a day's worth of added sugar. That's why the food industry was like, please don't make us do that.
I saw that it was a bottle of some sort of, I won't call the company, of tea, actually had more sugar in it, and people were buying it, than a can of Coke. So there's, people think that, okay, well, this is tea and it's better for me. You really need to look at the labels. And I've got like readers in my car, readers in my purse, because the little things are so small. But I always I'm always intrigued by how much, like, there's actually, at least in the brands I buy, there's actually more fat in popcorn, packaged popcorn, than potato chips.
Oh, yeah.
Who knew? I would have thought, popcorn would be so much better for you. No, there's so much more fat in popcorn, packaged popcorn.
Yeah, and with popcorn, I tell people, because popcorn is a whole grain,
Sure.
But I tell people, buy the kernels and then cook it at home, and it's very easy in a pot, either use coconut oil or olive oil. Because most of these brands of popcorn, there's some now that are better, but by and large, they're using the corn oil, the canola oil, the soybean oil, which are very inflammatory, not good for you. So for popcorn, I have to say, buy the kernels, cook it yourself, and you'll end up using less oil anyway.
Right. Let's get back to milk and dairy. What are the reasons why? Just kind of let's run down the reasons why. That whole milk does the body good. The agricultural industry is out there still selling it in very subtle ways. Why is milk bad for people?
Well, there's a few reasons. So there are some concerns. One is that there have been some links between increased dairy intake and an increased risk of prostate cancer in men and breast cancer in women. So there's that. And part of that is that, animal products and dairy are very high in something called IGF-1, which is a growth hormone. And the thing is that for humans, we don't, as we get older, we don't want to have a lot of growth hormone because that can increase the risk of certain cancers and diseases. So there's that. There's also the fact that, dairy products are not don't contain any fiber, which the average American needs more of. There's also the fact that the saturated fats in dairy are not the best, and not to mention too that most people are eating dairy products in ways that also have added sugar and added sodium. So cheese, for example, has skyrocketed because milk consumption has actually decreased, but cheese has gone through the roof.
Well, they had to find a way to get rid of the products. So,
exactly.
And that's why they're pushing cheese so hard.
Yeah, in fact, the government even had this whole, several years ago, the USDA had a whole thing where they were actively pushing fast food chains to add more cheese to their products and actually making them easier to do that. So, and then people are eating all these yogurts, which, yes, fermented and cultured foods are good, but most yogurts are full of sugar as well. So that's a problem. It's like this perfect storm. And that dairy tends to displace foods that would be higher in fiber.
Right.
Now the good thing is that now there's, you have things like coconut yogurts, almond milk yogurts, which are unsweetened. And don't have that growth hormone aspect. So if people like yogurt, now there's non-dairy alternatives.
Right. Even when you take a look, though, at the almond milk and the soy milk, you really have to look at the labels because some brands actually have a high degree of sugar and really not a lot of almond and not a lot of soy.
Exactly. So I always recommend when you're buying non-dairy milks, it has to be unsweetened all the time, because otherwise you could be eating a lot of sugar. And and if you have a blender at home, by the way, you can make your own, not soy milk, but almond milk. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is you just put, and that way you can put more almonds, right? So you could make cashew milk. All you do is you soak your almonds or your cashews or your pistachios, whatever it is, overnight in water. You drain them. You blend them with about, say, for every cup of nuts, about 3 cups of water. And then you run it through a cheesecloth, and then and that's how you make nut milk. Very easy.
Some controversy or maybe disagreement about oils. The strict vegans are the ones who are saying no oils, no oils, no oils. What's the middle ground? Because you're talking about, we hear a lot of people talk about olive oil is good for you, or these different oils are good for you, and then now you've got this group over here saying no oils at all. What is it? Yeah,
so I recommend like an 80-20 rule, where I say that the majority of your fat content should come from whole food. So you should get your fats from nuts and seeds and avocados, right? Because you can make a salad dressing using almond butter as a base and then adding different things to it. You can put avocado on your salads. So it is true, though, that not all oils are equal. So olive oil does offer healthier fats than, say, soybean oil, but with any oil, all you're getting is fat. When you eat cashews, you're getting healthy fats and fiber and minerals and vitamins. Right. Same thing if you're eating almonds or avocados. When you're eating avocado oil, all you're getting is the heart-healthy monounsaturated fat, but you're missing out on all the nutrients. So I say 80-20. I don't think you have to avoid it 100%, right. But people need to get out of this habit also of just thinking, oh, it's a healthy oil, and then they just pour it right over the salad thinking it's still calories, it's still a bunch of fat. So you want to just be a little bit more mindful.
There's this one guy, I'm sure you recognize his name, McDougall.
Oh, yes, Dr. McDougall, right? Yes,
right.
Yes.
He talks about, if you have the oil, just slap it on your thigh.
Right.
Says if you eat it, you're going to wear it.
Right, yeah, that's his motto, yes.
I get a big kick out of him, but I think that's one of the challenges, is because everybody's not obsessed and doesn't do it for a living as you do, so it's easy to get overwhelmed. One of the things that I have found in my journey, and just so you know, it's taken me 2 years, and when I tell this to people, their eyes roll in the back of their head. For somebody who is just like such an avowed carnivore, just the thought of giving up meat, when I said it to my family, they were like, nah, girl, that's never going to happen for you. Mm-hmm. It took a little bit by a little bit by a little bit for me to get to the point. I didn't fight it. I just gradually changed my diet. So for people who are seeing these messages, they think it's just so overwhelming, and it's just easier to go to McDonald's, and now McDonald's is doing the Uber delivery.
Oh,
when
geez.
I saw that, it was like,
the last thing we need.
Really? I mean, it's like, at least if you had to get in your car and go to McDonald's, now you get to just sit on the couch and just order your pizza and your McDonald's, bring all the fat to the home.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you bring up a really good point. I always tell people, look, in 1998, I started just not eating meat, chicken, or pork, but I still wasn't eating very healthy. 2011, I went 100% plant-based, vegan. And even since then, I've cut back on oils, now eating more whole food fats. So for me, it's also been a journey, and I'm still learning, right? So now one thing that I'm really into is adaptogens and medicinal mushrooms that I'm adding to my diet. So
what's an adaptogen? I've actually read about those.
Yeah, so they're actually compounds that hormonally help you be balanced, and just, because hormones really dictate a lot of our health.
Right.
So things like whether it's maca or certain mushrooms or certain herbs that I'm starting to add. So the point is that for me, I'm always learning. And for me, it's been, almost 20 years at this point. It's not, to go from A to Z, I think you need bridges. And to me, that's why, some vegans say, well, these new vegan burgers that, they're not very healthy for you. And I say, yeah, they're not. But if it helps somebody make the transition, we need to encourage that. We cannot expect people to meet us the road that we've been at for 20 years.
Right.
So I can talk about what's optimal, but I'm willing to meet you halfway if it helps you.
And one of my big challenges now is to really teach myself how to use spices. Because I'm still a salt girl, and when push comes to shove, I actually went out and I've got a whole box, like a shoebox, of all of these spices and herbs that I've collected. But then I'll put one on. It's like, I know there's probably a way to do it, but I'm not doing it right. And so then I'll just put some salt on it because I'm hungry and I don't want to take the time to figure out what works with what.
Well, and you know what? What a lot of people forget these days is, don't forget about the power of YouTube. No shade to the publishers. I'm not trying to take your money away. But, you can go on YouTube and just type something like cilantro dressing.
Right.
Or parsley sauce, whatever. And, because most people also, I can understand how reading a recipe can be like, wait, what do I do? Minced? What is this minced? Right. If you watch it on YouTube, it's a lot easier.
Right.
So I recommend for spices, if you have a bunch of dill or rosemary, go to YouTube and think of, do you want to make a sauce, a dressing? Type it in there, and you're going to see so many recipes that show you how to easily do something with it that is tasty.
Right, and you'll find, don't go to the first ones, because I found that those first ones, they got 50 million ingredients. It's like, girl, please, there's just no way I'm doing that.
Yeah, type easy.
Type in easy, like do maybe 3 or 4 to just get yourself started, and those are the ones that I've grafted toward, because at least it's like ABCs. I want to get started small. Maybe someday I'll get to the 15, but right now I just need to get like a couple going.
And same thing with oil-free, by the way. Again, because I get how oil-free is like, how do you do this?
Right.
So go to YouTube, oil-free salad dressing. I feel like salad dressing is one of the easiest things to start with. Because, and those taste really good. So, yeah, go to YouTube, look up recipes. And I find that for most people, it works great. Because for most people, watching somebody do it makes it easier than reading it in a book.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about the, as far as McDougall and many people are concerned, Dr. McDougall, eggs, dairy, and meat. When we talk about the big 3 when it comes to the majority of the healthcare concerns probably Americans have today. And I'm sure, the food industry, when they see this show, are going to go, go kidnap that girl. But fortunately, these discussions are being had on YouTube and across social media.
Yes.
Thank God for social media. That
Absolutely.
Now people are having these conversations.
And independent media.
Media, because these are the foundation of the American diet, which we call the SAD diet, and that we are like now, exporting across the world because we've got so much product. Eggs, come on, eggs are good for you. Scramble those eggs in the morning. Dairy, your milk is good for you. Meat, build strong body. You must get your protein. These 3, as far as nutritionists like yourself are concerned, are the big problems in the American diet.
Those 3 and sugar.
And sugar.
Yes. But here's the issue, because that's the problem that you were just talking about, nutritionism. When you isolate one nutrient and you talk about eggs, dairy, and meat are high in protein, then you can really make it seem like they are important because we need protein. But you need to talk about, more importantly, what is missing. There's no fiber in eggs, dairy, or meat. They're also very low in magnesium. Magnesium, more and more we're finding, is crucial for heart health and for the regulation of blood sugar. Now, the saturated fat aspect, there's more and more science that it's not as black or white as we think. So actually, with the saturated fat is one of my least concerns with that.
Right.
For me, it's the lack of fiber, the lack of magnesium, and then there's all these other things. For example, meat is high in carnitine, which raises heart disease risk. There's also a compound in meat that when our gut bacteria digest it, it turns it into something called TMAO. When you have high TMAO levels in your blood, again, heart disease risk goes up. So again, it's about looking at these foods in their whole aspect. And when you look at their whole aspect, it's like, yeah, they have protein, but there's also all these added things that come along with them. Also, when you cook meat, there's a compound that is formed called G5C, which is also bad for heart health. So it's about understanding the complexity of everything.
Right.
Not just about it has protein, it doesn't, it has saturated fat. But when you look, that's why eggs, dairy, and meat are problematic. They're also not providing us with things that are missing from the standard American diet.
And in my neighborhood, the barbecue season has already begun. And there's, for me, it's like, I know that if I actually tasted it, I wouldn't like it. But when I drive up in my drive and I smell that smell, but the cooking of meat, and especially the grilling of meat, is really pretty bad.
Yeah, it forms those compounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why at least the good news now is that, again, they may not be, super 100% whole food based, but there are now plant-based alternatives if you want to have, because again, food is also social.
Right.
So if you go to a barbecue, you don't want to be just munching on lettuce, right? Because then everybody's like, what are you eating?
And then lecturing everybody, that hamburger is going to kill you. Right?
Right, exactly.
They're going to throw you out.
No, yeah, you don't want to do that because also shame is not a motivator.
Right.
I tell people, don't shame people about the food. What you can do is bring the plant-based hot dogs, bring the plant-based burgers, put them on the grill. That way you partake in the festivities,
right.
and you might tell them, here, take a bite. What do you think?
Right.
And then I'd be like, oh, that's actually not bad.
Right.
That's how you have the conversation, not by preaching and getting on some soapbox and telling people not to eat this or that. You have to make it fun. And the good news is that now there's so many products that you can take to a barbecue if you want to partake socially, but not partake in the animal products.
Right. We're going to take a break in just a moment, but before we go there, I want to just kind of give you a preview of what we're going to go to next. I really want to talk about the food lobby and the food industry. I really don't think, and I really didn't know, I would like to think of myself as being media savvy and being, I grew up with a mother. We used to love to watch commercials. We found commercials fascinating, and that was like we would watch the commercials before we'd watch the show, and to see how products were being sold. But that was unusual. I now realize that most people don't sit there and watch the commercials going, girl, do you know that could kill you?
Right.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Andy Bellatti, nutritionist extraordinaire.
Crazy Terry here with your car care tip of the day. Today's tip's about tire maintenance, how to check a tire, how to fill it properly. Okay, so as we can see, we've got a low tire. We probably saw that a month ago and said we'll fill it, but like everything, we let a day go by. Next thing you know, we got a problem. Properly check a tire, remove the valve cover, got a tire gauge, simply put it on there, and it'll read the pressure down at the bottom in PSI, pounds per square inch. We can see here that this is so low it's barely reading. It's probably 10 pounds in it at best. So how do we properly inflate it? Well, we're going to need an air chuck. Go down to the local store or come by the shop. We'll use this tool to inflate it. And that sounds like that's all we need to do. But we need to know how much to inflate it to, because overinflated is just as bad as underinflated. We can look at the tire, and on here we're going to find a cold pressure rating rated in PSI. And it's going to say anywhere from 32 to 80 pounds depending on the vehicle. We'll want to find that so we know the maximum inflation cold. We're going to look until we find the load rating. And here we find the maximum PSI is 44 PSI, pounds per square inch cold. We don't want to fill it any more than that, but we don't want to underfill it either. We want to fill it to 44. So it seems like checking the air pressure is no big deal. It's not. It's really simple to do, but we want to make sure we got the correct pressure. How do we find that? Let me show you. We open the door and we locate the sticker. It's usually right here. It could be down on the lower rocker, but it's on the driver's side. And after we look around, we'll see right here it says 35 PSI. That's the pressure that the tire requires that was sold with the vehicle. But if you change the tires later to a high-performance tire, mud and snow or anything else, look at the cold pressure on the side of the tire. to make sure you're properly inflated. This could be 35 today, but we get a performance tire, it's 44, 45, or even higher. We'll want to make sure we're inflating the tire properly. A couple of things you're going to need if you're checking your own tires: tire gauge and a rag, because you are going to get a little dirty. If you don't want to do that, I don't blame you. Bring it to the shop, we'll check it for you. We'll do a whole inspection on the vehicle if you like. We'll check the tires, make sure you're safe. This can save you a lot of time and keep you safe. Crazy Terry here with your car care tip of the day. Thanks a lot.
Welcome back to Live Las Vegas with Rikki Cheese. Andy Bellatti, a nutritionist extraordinaire, is my guest today. We're talking about a lot of different things, but one of the things I really want to talk about today is the food lobby. I think that in the social media and internet world that we live in now, I'm not saying that people have become immune to the messages, but the messages now are being probably more cleverly disguised and positioned in programming than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, marketing, the reason why these marketing executives get paid the way they do is because marketing works.
Right.
Right. And so that's why if you look at the companies that are paying millions to market their products, it's not because they're not getting the airspace because they have the healthiest products.
Right.
It's because they just have very, smart minds that know how to position certain foods to make them look healthier than they are.
Right.
I'm always amazed with just the yogurt commercials.
Yeah.
And how everybody's always, I always laugh at, they take a spoonful and they just close their eyes and they just seem so happy. I'm like, it's yogurt. I don't know about anybody else, but that's not how I eat yogurt, right? But they make it seem like it's like this super delicious, wholesome thing. And then you look at the ingredient list and it's full of corn syrup and sugar.
Mm-hmm. Or even the sports drinks. That's my favorite, the sports drinks. When you take a look at the labeling on what's actually in these sports drinks, you might as well just buy a Coke.
Yes, and that comes back to, see, it all goes full circle because PepsiCo, which owns Gatorade, they have a whole unit dedicated to, they call it something like I don't know the name exactly, but something like the Gatorade Hydration Center. That's the thing. All these food companies have these institutes and centers, which sound super scientific,
right,
but they're all just a way to conduct research that makes their product look good. You're never going to see PepsiCo release a study showing how Gatorade actually is useless, right? Because that's the whole thing. If you can create your own institute to craft studies that promote your product,
right,
that goes a long way.
Yeah, and you look at the people after they've worked out and they've biked, and they've done all this stuff and they're drinking the Gatorade. Well, if you drink water, it's actually better for you. It may not have a lot of sugar in it and may not taste as good, but
yeah, and also people don't realize too that if you had some water and half a banana, you're getting even much more nutrition than you would out of Gatorade. So all you need is just, again, real food. You don't need to buy all these products that are being sold to you as being vital and crucial.
Right.
And most people also, by the way, most people are not, at football training camp spending 4 hours doing scrimmage, right? It's like if you're walking on a treadmill for 20 minutes, you do not need a sports drink. I guarantee you that.
Right. You're basically drinking glorified Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, literally.
You are. Let's talk a little bit, too, about some of the myths about working out and the connection between your diet. Because that's, I think, one of the keys that we're still missing. I think Americans are getting the message that they need to eat more fruits and vegetables. They get that. But we're still not, I think, getting the part, because honestly, I'll admit it, I don't exercise as much as I should. So when you coach your clients, how much of your coaching is actually focusing on exercise?
It's about, my coaching is about 80% food-based.
Okay.
But I do tell them that physical activity is key for mental health, because when you engage in physical activity, the neurotransmitters in your brain, kind of start firing in a good way, right? So a lot of times if you are feeling anxious or maybe a little bit depressed, exercise can help.
Right.
Exercise is also key for blood sugar regulation
Right.
and for osteoporosis for your bones. Again, everybody's drinking, thinking that milk is for bones, which as we discussed, it's not all you need. But actually the number one thing for bone health is weight-bearing exercise.
Really?
Yes, that is what's going to keep your bones healthier and stave off osteoporosis. So what I don't like, though, is that most people only talk about exercise as being about weight loss, and then they get frustrated. Well, if you cannot outrun a bad diet.
Right.
So diet is for your weight management, but exercise is key for bones, for your brain, and for blood sugar control.
Right. Let's talk about some myths out there. One of the big ones here in our community, I'm going back and forth about this one, is lemon water. I've seen that. It's like, oh, you should drink lemon water, and that's going to do all these great things for your body.
It cleans your house.
Yes, right, exactly. And then there's the camp that says you have to drink lemon water when it's warm, you can't drink it when it's cold. And what is the deal with lemon water?
Well, lemon water is very seductive because it gives you the idea that it's this one magic hack that
Yeah.
you drink lemon water and your fat, you burn fat, you grow 5 inches, and and suddenly you get you get muscles. You don't.
Your boobs get bigger.
Right, it's like liposuction. You just have to drink it. No. So here's the thing: is lemon water bad for you? No. Are you adding some vitamin C to your day? Absolutely. Is it better than a Frappuccino? Yes. If it helps you to drink more water, because most people aren't drinking enough, that's great. But there's nothing else about lemon water that really matters.
How
Warm
did
or
this
hot.
get started? I mean, why? I mean, there's a whole group of acquaintances of mine. If I walk in and I say I'm not drinking, and I've got to drink warm lemon water, that's like a beat down in the parking lot, right?
Well, the thing is, I think, again, it's, now with social media, things can spread very easily. And again, it's very seductive because it's not, adding lemon water to your day isn't a big change. Right. I would ask people, so what's been happening since you started drinking lemon water? What have they actually noticed? Mm-hmm. Again, it's not bad for you, but I think there's more important things. If you're drinking lemon water and then you're having a Pop-Tart, I'd rather you focus on not eating the Pop-Tart. Right. You see what I mean?
Oh, one of the other things I got into with a colleague recently was, I love this one, the protein bars. Whenever somebody offers me a protein bar, I say, well, why don't you just give me a Hershey's with almonds?
Yes.
Because I'm going to enjoy the Hershey's with almonds much more than the protein bar. And trust me, there's less stuff happening with the Hershey's than is happening with the protein bars. The industry that's selling this push for protein bars, this is a master stroke. People actually think that those little hard, nasty, crunchy, flavorless things are good for them. Just go ahead and have yourself a Snickers. If you're going to go on that route, enjoy your sugar.
Yeah, most protein bars are glorified candy bars. But it again shows you the dangers of focusing on one nutrient.
Right.
Protein bar. And not to mention, I've seen protein bars where when you look at the nutrition facts, there's more added sugar per gram than protein. Why is it called the protein bar? It's a sugar bar, right? But again, most people get seduced by one nutrient, and that's the problem with, people wonder why has the health of our nation not really improved, because we continue to go down the road of single nutrients instead of just talking about food as a whole.
This week, actually, a couple of days ago, I posted on my Facebook page because I was at the gas station, and I was walking down the aisle, and what I saw, I just couldn't believe, and so I had to post it. Vitamin water for pets.
Ugh.
And it was pricey. It was in these, the jugs, vitamin water for pets. And I stood there for the longest time, and I know how my dogs are, and they go for the nastiest, foulest. When we take them to the park, God forbid that they should drink clean water. But I thought, now who's buying this? So then I went and posted the picture. I couldn't believe the comments from people who say they're actually giving their dogs or cats bottled water because they think that the tap water is so nasty, it tastes bad, and Las Vegas water is bad for you.
Well, most bottled water is tap water. Newsflash. I mean, it's funny. People really do think that bottled water comes from some, pristine mountain in Norway.
Well, isn't that where the Arrow, whatever? Isn't that from the spring?
Right, exactly. Oh, by the way, speaking of crazy trends, have you heard about raw water?
No.
Okay, so it's like the latest thing in Silicon Valley, because they're all a little bit kooky over there. Right. So now the whole thing is that if you're really like in the upper echelon of craziness, you want your water to be raw, meaning that it's untreated. So you go to a spring and you get all the bacteria, because supposedly that gives your cells like more fuel, but it really just gives you diarrhea.
Right.
Like you do not want to drink water out of a stream in the middle of the woods.
Right.
There's all sorts of parasites and bacteria. So FYI, in case it makes it down here, do not get into the raw water craze.
Raw water.
And it's like $25 a jug.
Wow.
Insane.
Wow.
And if you Google raw water, some of these companies make it seem like raw water has life force. I don't know how you measure life force,
Right.
but we don't, it's not a nutrient.
Yeah.
But it shows you how there's always something, and somebody's always making money, by the way. Nobody's giving it away for free.
Right. I've got family members, and I finally got around this because they would just get crazy with me because I refused to spend a whole lot of money on bottled water. I only have enough bottled water in the car because, God forbid, the babies and I are out somewhere and they're thirsty. But I'll take the bottle back in and I'll fill it out of the tap.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten caught doing that a couple of times. That's another beat down right there in the kitchen. Oh no, we have to have another one. And I'm thinking, well, this bottle, it's just going to go in the landfill, so I might as well use it until there's so much lipstick on the That's my dead giveaway. When there's so much lipstick on the lid, I can't take it anymore and I can't wash it off. Well, by that time, I've used it like 15 times.
Right, exactly.
I don't see the reason to go out and buy a whole nother pallet of water to just throw one bottle of plastic away.
No, you're right, and that's the thing too. Well, that's another industry that had, they struck gold when we were convinced at some point. I think it was in the 80s.
Okay.
We were convinced that we need bottled water because before then that wasn't a necessity, and now everybody, is always thinking that bottled water is better than tap when it really isn't. Tap water is perfectly fine and safe. This other whole thing about pH waters. No.
Alkaline waters, all these waters.
Unnecessary.
So like the thing that got me about the pet water was that there were vitamins added. And I'm thinking, well, shouldn't they be getting their vitamins from the kibble?
Right.
Why are we adding vitamins to this water? And call me a skeptic, but how do I know if there's any vitamins in this water at all? I'm not saying that
You're
the
right.
company is lying, but it's not like I can look at it and tell whether there are vitamins in this water.
Right, and also, as far as I know, there's no epidemic of pets being having vitamin deficiencies. So that's an example of just marketing to humans, but it works, right? Because
Right.
I think we think, well, vitamins are good, and we all love our pets, so we're like, well, we should give it to them. But that's just the example of unnecessary marketing.
I went with the pet centric Netflix special. It's called Pet Fools, and I didn't realize that actually it's sort of like even in the food industry, you have just really a handful of major companies that are producing the majority of food in the United States. Now, it might be coming from different subsidiaries, but it all comes down to this little handful of companies right here. It's the same thing with the pet industry. There are basically 5 companies. So when you walk into any pet food store and you see the wide array of pet foods, and one of my favorites is the one that has, it looks like come on, the ones with the colors. Not Lucky Charms.
Fruit Loops.
Fruit Loops, right. So the colors of the kibble they're colored like Fruit Loops. Your dog can't tell if they look like Fruit Loops.
Right.
That marketing is for the owner. That has nothing to do with the dogs. And so after I watched the show, I actually went to the store and I started looking up and down the aisles, realizing, oh my gosh, so maybe I don't even need to be buying this premium food. Maybe I can, what I'm doing, because, and I'll throw this out there, I'm supplementing what I eat. The dogs eat too. They're basically going plant-based, and maybe someday I'd like to go raw, but I'm not quite that brave. But the marketing is done for the owners. It's not really done for the dogs or the cats.
Yeah, well, and this reminds me actually of something that I learned, and you think I would know this. So my cat is he's a Maine Coon, which are supposed to be large, but when I adopted him, he was 21 pounds, and last time we went to the vet, he was 30. Not good, right? So then, this whole so now I'm careful with giving him weight management food. Well, here's what I realized. Now I realize that on the side of the bag, they tell you how many calories per cup. And I realized that a lot of the cat foods that are for weight loss have a very high caloric content. So it's a complete lie.
Wow.
So the one that I buy now, for example, is 240 calories per cup, which is low. But I've seen for cats, like weight control food, that's 420 per cup.
Wow.
So even with pet food, you have to read the ingredients and read the numbers, because on the front of the package, they sell you a bill of goods.
Yeah. So you have to really be vigilant. And let's talk about time management too, because I understand when people say, it's going to take me too long to cook. And when I say, especially in the fast food restaurants in my neighborhood, I watch people sitting in those lines for a while. And by the time they get in line to get up to order, to actually get home, to actually unpack, they could have made some food or make it ahead of time. But we seem to have gotten away from cooking in general. I mean, people don't even want to do it on the weekends, because you got to watch the game and you've got to get on Facebook. And so because you have been on Facebook all week long.
Right, exactly.
So the thought of getting in the kitchen and cutting up vegetables and prepping for the next week is like, what? I don't want to do that.
Well, that's where I tell people, because you're right. I definitely understand the time crunch. But now, for example, there's so many ways that you can get I have nothing against pre-chopped vegetables. You can buy diced butternut squash. You can buy the Brussels sprouts that are already halved. You can get the mushrooms that are already sliced. You can get the salad components that are ready to be eaten.
Thrown together, right.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is, just getting a sheet pan and putting the sliced mushrooms, the sliced Brussels sprouts in the oven, cooking up some whole wheat pasta. You can now buy pesto that's already made.
Right.
That's a meal, and the components are already made for you. All you're really doing is assembling.
Right.
So I think, because I understand that it can be intimidating to perhaps be chopping things, but you got to take advantage. Even now, for example, you can buy brown rice or quinoa that is already frozen. There's no added ingredients, microwave for 3 minutes, you have a whole grain that's ready to use.
So, yeah, and part of my journey too is one of the things that was really amazing to me is, I grew up in a military family. We didn't have a lot of money when we were kids, and so there were some basics. What we would do is, first of all, you had your backbone of the diet, which was spaghetti and meatballs. You made the spaghetti ahead of time, and of course you just got the meatballs from, let's face it, ravioli, Chef Boyardee, throw them on top of them, or pinto beans, and everything was made, in the slow cooker, and you'd have enough for a couple of days. It wasn't like we were coming home every day and cooking. And
right.
So to go back old school, and it's so easy for me now, and I just freeze everything. So on the weekends, I'll make stuff, and so then during the week, all I have to do is take a package out, and between me and the puppies, all I have to do is throw some fresh vegetables on them, and we're good to go. I'm not standing in front of the stove other than heating up the frozen part. But that's what we did as kids. We'd make big vats of food. So because I was the person who was cooking, and I don't want to cook every day. So I didn't have to cook every day.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. You could make a big batch of soup, and then soup freezes really well.
Right.
And when things are frozen, they will last you months.
Right.
Because you're right. The idea isn't to be cooking from scratch every single, if you want to, you can.
Right.
But there's ways to do it so that you do it all in one kind of batch, and then you have things ready to go. Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge you think right now that we're facing in America when it comes to our diets?
Well, I think, again, it comes back to, too much sugar and too many animal products, because those two things are problematic. Because when you're eating too many animal products, you're not getting enough fiber. When you're eating too much sugar, you're not getting enough fiber. And both of those foods, categories of foods, are missing the minerals that we need. So that's why I tell people, forget about carbs, fat, just fewer animal products, less sugar, more fiber, more plants. Don't worry about the fat, the carbs, because some fats are very healthy, some carbs are super healthy. So don't think about that. Just think more plants, less meat, less sugar, more fiber.
And when people say fiber, even I kind of go, it's like, when you say fiber, what do you mean? Because I still do think like material. Like,
gotcha.
Going to the fabric store. It's like, I don't want to eat fabric.
No, don't go to Joann Fabrics. Go to a grocery store. Right. Fiber is all fruits, all vegetables, all beans, all nuts, all seeds, all whole grains like oatmeal, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat. Those are all fiber-rich foods.
Right.
So the easy way to remember is, if it's a whole plant-based food, it has fiber. If it's an animal product, it does not.
Right. The transition for people who are doing this now and in Rosalind Brooks, her wholeness group. You go on her website, Well Women of Color. Because she just started this like in this last year.
Great.
To see the testimonials from women who have actually changed their diets and gone back to their doctors like maybe 5 or 6 weeks later, and all of a sudden they don't need diabetes medicine anymore. Their blood pressure is normal. Things that they would never have thought possible when their doctors told them you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life. Simply changing to a whole food, plant-based diet made all the difference in the world. I'm not making this up. These are testimonials you can see on the website.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen it myself with my clients, and that's the thing that, being on blood pressure medication for the rest of your life is not really, it's a Band-Aid solution. So when people say, oh, my blood pressure is fine now, well, it's because you're taking a pill every single day. So it still needs to be worked on, because ideally, I get it, there's always going to be some genetic cases where no matter what you eat, I get that, but that's like 5% of the population. By and large, most people, if they fix the food issue, they could either, even if they can't get completely off of it, they could maybe cut it in half.
Right.
And that's better because, a pill doesn't just go to your heart and fix the heart, it affects your entire body. So the fewer medications you can be on, the better.
Let's try the food method first and see how that works out. You're only talking about 6 weeks out of your life, and just try it yourself. I mean, I can honestly attest that my health has improved tremendously. Okay,
Wonderful.
Where can people find you?
Okay, so you can go to andybellatti.com, ANDYBELLATTI.com. I'm also on Twitter, Andy Bellatti, on Instagram, Andy Bellatti, on Facebook, Andy Bellatti, MSRD. So plenty of ways to get in touch with me.
And check them out on Business Insider. That's where I found you.
Oh, the videos are fun.
Yeah, the
Yes,
videos
they are.
really, really
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, it's just take responsibility for your own health. Try some new things. It can't hurt. You can always go back to McDonald's. McDonald's is not going anywhere.
Good point.
We're not going anywhere either. We're going to always be here. Thank you for joining us on Live Las Vegas with Rikki Cheese, and of course, we will get Andy back here again as soon as we can. He is so busy. I had to book him like 3 months in advance. See you next week.